Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Jackie Brenner, a pre-med student who has enjoyed meeting other STEM students from around the world through my TikTok and Discord STEM Potential. I created these STEM Potential webinars in order to combat the lack of mentorship and representation that I notice in STEM fields. We are an online Discord that provides a network for all students to share their unique perspectives from diverse backgrounds and create strong connections. Discord members can act as mentors and mentees as they progress along the stages of their education while also finding friends with common interests. I would like to give a shout out to all of the members of STEM Potential for working extremely hard in order to make all of this possible. I am proud and humbled to have assembled a group of incredibly successful STEM professionals. This session will be highlighting PhDs, masters, and bachelor's professionals. And I now want to start off by allowing each panelist to give a 3 to 5 minute introduction. Alex, if you can start us off.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right? All right, I want to clarify one thing. I'm so sorry I don't have the great background. My computer is too old for that Zoom function, so enjoy the walls behind me. As I said, my name is Akshay Hansen. My pronouns are he, him, his. I got my degree, or my bachelor's of science in aquatic and fishery sciences from the University of Washington in 2017. And my background is in salmon biology and riparian ecology. Basically what that means is I'm a fish nerd who likes to look at plants, primarily along freshwater streams and wetlands. I've worked with a ton of different organisms, like Pacific salmonids. So Coho salmon and steelhead trout are the big ones. We've also got red-legged frogs, yellow-legged frogs, a bunch of different plant species. And right now, I've started my master's thesis. I just got into grad school this year. I will be starting in the fall of 22 at the University of Davis in California, doing a master's program looking at Coho salmon migration. So my thesis will be looking at why aren't Coho salmon recovering? Where I'm at in California is the southernmost exclusively wild population of Coho salmon in the country, or in North America. And what that means is every population south of Marin County in the Bay Area is assisted by hatchery release Coho. And so we're really trying to keep this broodstock program from going extinct because these are some of the last totally wild fish that are going to be resilient to climate change as the oceans warm and temperatures rise further north. And I'm really excited because I just finished my first year of data collection. And next year, we're going to have an even bigger data collection and with more arrays. And we can talk about that all later. I'm getting really excited. So I'm going to pass the mic on to someone else.
Maybe Jillian, if you would like to go next.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jillian Cannon. I have my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but moved down there for school. First job was in construction. And then after that, I've spent most of my career in production and manufacturing. So walked into my first manufacturing job on the first tour, fell in love, been in manufacturing ever since. So I worked in a variety of roles from straight up mechanical engineering support to in production. I worked for IKEA briefly as a production engineer. Now I work for DuPont. I'm an area manager there. So not so much day-to-day engineering anymore, but working with engineers and operations. So my job now is working with chemical slurries for semiconductors. So it's an exciting time to be in semiconductors. And we have an analytical portion that I am helping to expand and run, and then also the slurry operations themselves. So yeah, pretty much my background. I live with my wife in Philadelphia with our dog and 2 cats.
Awesome. Dr. Isaacs, if you'd like to go next.
Sure, thanks for the invitation. My name is Andre Isaacs. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica originally, moved here for college and got my PhD at the University of Pennsylvania, did my postdoctoral work at UC Berkeley, and now I am an associate professor of chemistry at the College of the Holy Cross. I am a trained organic chemist. I do a lot of research on copper catalyzed organic reactions. So I make heterocycles that contain nitrogen atoms. And I have a research group of exclusively, I should say, undergraduates. And we work during the summers and the school years, advancing these goals. So pretty much that's who I am. Live in Boston, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes from where I work. With my husband, who is a doctor. And so I'm very grateful to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you some organic chemistry questions later. Last but not least, Robert, if you would like to go next.
Sure. Thank you, Jackie. So my name is Robert Colvin. I got a bachelor's in Earth and Planetary Science at Harvard. And without really preparing for it, I became a classroom teacher after college. I've been teaching high school science, astronomy, chemistry, physics for 15 years. Recently with COVID, I actually left my job in the classroom, and I am now exclusively tutoring professionally, one-on-one and small classes. I earned 2 master's degrees, one in education specializing in administration and supervision in 2009. And then I got a second one in education specializing in chemistry in 2018. And I've lived in New Jersey for the last 15 years, working in Manhattan. And I live with my husband, Mike. We've been married for 5 years. And yeah, we like to do a lot of traveling. And fortunately, unfortunately, there is a silver lining with COVID, but I do get to tutor pretty much anywhere I am at the moment, which is nice. So it works out with our traveling schedule.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for those amazing introductions. We will now move into the first part of the Q&A. Again, a quick note, if you would like to ask any questions, just please ask in the chat function. So I think my first question is, how did you choose your field and why? Maybe Dr. Isaacs, you can start us off with that.
Oh, sure. I would say my field kind of chose me in the sense that I in Jamaica, where I went to high school. It's very different. It's kind of like the British system where we have to decide what kind of track we want to be on in the 9th grade. So we go into the 10th grade either as science students, arts, etc. So I chose a science pathway. My uncle was basically my high school science teachers weren't the greatest. My uncle was a very good teacher, and he taught me in the evenings chemistry and math. So I really excelled in chemistry because of his help. I was struggling a bit in high school. So I think his help kind of pushed me to be successful in chemistry in high school, and that kind of led to my success in college in chemistry. So it really was due to his kind of tutoring. So it's important to get a strong foundation. Not many people have that foundation. And I think his help kind of pushed me to chemistry. And in college, I excelled at it. I couldn't stop doing chemistry. I fell in love with it. I was good at it. And so, I just kept going all the way until I got a terminal degree. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, so I would say for me, I got pretty lucky in that I had a teacher in science in high school that recommended that I go to a SWE event at Widener University. SWE is Society of Women Engineers, so just plug them for a second. They were doing this event to try and let basically high school girls, or I'm sure boys too, know about different kinds of engineering. And so it's really cool. They had all these stations set up for different types of engineering. I can't remember what they all were now because I saw the mechanical one, and I believe we were making paper airplanes. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And they talked about aeronautical engineering and mechanical and all the different things you could do. And so from then it was pretty much like, okay, this is it. And I kind of alluded to manufacturing. For me, I happened to get a job opportunity. It was the time in my life where I was looking for a change. Went for the tour, saw all this machinery, and basically it was a glass manufacturing plant. There was sand and you turn it into, a pint glass at the end. And it was just like the coolest thing in the world. It was like, man, somebody had an idea to do this, and they're taking basically through magic, it seems like, the sand and making it into something cool that, you see out every day. So yeah, kind of how I got into manufacturing.
So it seems like the running theme here is that the high school years were rather influential on our choices of careers. So I'm actually kind of proud that I've spent a good chunk of my life teaching science in the high school classroom. And I understand how it can be a frustrating experience for some, depending upon the teacher, and it can also be, life-changing if the teacher, sends you on a certain path. So I did the best I could when I was in the classroom, and tried to show my students the wonders of the physical world around us, and how it can really be a career for them, whether it's in academia or research or whatever. But personally, I actually didn't expect to be a teacher when I was an undergraduate. After college, I kind of flitted around the country a little bit, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And eventually I basically just landed in a summer school teaching position, and I immediately loved it. It was always something new. I had to be on my toes every second, every minute of class. And because it was always something new, I just loved it. And a few months later, I was in a teaching position in the regular academic year, and the rest was history. But I definitely didn't expect to be a teacher. Like I said, I majored in earth and planetary science. I figured I'd be doing something in academia and research at a higher institution, but I fell in love with teaching, and that's where I ended up. So that's my story.
And to bring it on home, I've actually known that I've wanted to work with salmon since I was a really little kid. My dad is this huge fly fisherman, and I was that screwball child who like couldn't stay away from the water. And when I was really little, he caught a beautiful rainbow trout, right? And he put it in my hands and was like, "What is this alien? Like, this is so awesome." And then in 5th grade, I did like a week of outdoor ed at this ranch in California. And I was like, "You can get paid to work outside." I was never good in the classroom. I was very distracting. I'm very high energy. And I was like, if I can make money doing this, I'm gonna do that. By the time I got to high school, I was not excelling in a lot of my classes, but biology was always like a decent grade for me. And by the time I was applying to colleges, I found a program at the University of Washington where you could study salmon. And I was like, done, sign me up. Here we go. And then ever since I graduated in 2017, I've been trying to get any job that will have me in nature. And it just so happens that my first job out of school was in my hometown, less than 10 minutes from the house I grew up in, looking at coho salmon and steelhead trout. And I've just been rolling with that ever since. And I'm so excited.
As Robert mentioned, your years in high school were so influential, especially in undergrad. So I was wondering, what were the most helpful skills you learned in undergrad or also high school to, go into whatever, you all are in such diverse fields. So you can expand maybe a little bit more on that. Maybe Jillian, you can get us started.
Sure. So I'd say, I guess, competing priorities. So I'm sure like a lot of fields, operations feels like there's always, 10 more things than you can do in a day to get done, especially when you're in like a 24/7 facility, it just doesn't stop. So you're going to have a lot of stuff coming up. If you have good engagement with the people working on the floor, then they'll be bringing you ideas. You have things for your engineers to do. You have lab equipment to work on, whatever it is, right? And being able to manage those things and be mentally organized enough to get done what you need to get done in the time that you need it done. That's really important. And I think college can help you with that, right? Especially when you have a large course load and maybe you're doing extra things, extracurriculars, maybe have a job or an internship. That was kind of my experience. And at times it's really challenging to try and figure out exactly like, I have a work deadline, but I have a test tomorrow. So like, what do I do? So it's a really good time to kind of practice that before you get into a job where you're going to have to do that probably a lot of the time.
I'll go next. So one of the most important skills that I learned in my undergraduate years is to really be proactive about your own education. And what I mean by that is there are, large classes are divided into smaller sections. And occasionally you would be put into a section in which the TA and the TA and you didn't really kind of mesh well. And not that they were bad people or weren't doing their job well, it's just that they didn't really speak your language. Or, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. So, you're paying a lot of money to go to school. So it's worth it to kind of take charge and do what you need to do in order to maximize your own academic success. So if that means switching sections or finding another outlet where you can pick up material, then you need to go ahead and do it. I know how easy it is to fall into the trap of just saying, oh, things are going to work out. But if you are not comfortable with how things are progressing in a certain class, then by all means, you need to change things so that you do have success in the end. And I learned that early on in school, and it worked out well for me. So that's definitely something I would recommend.
I would like to pick up where Robert left off and just point out that you have to just have good organizational skills. You really need to be able to to be honest with yourself about like how much time you really are putting into studying, be able to evaluate whether or not your studying is productive. You know, it's one thing to say, I just spent 3 hours looking at a textbook, but did you actually spend 3 hours looking at a textbook, right? So you have to find ways to be honest with yourself about how productive you're being and have good schedules. But I would say the most important thing I would say is be okay with failing, and also because it's a part of the process, right? You're not gonna be successful if you don't accept that you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna look silly. You don't want to ask that question in class because someone will think you're dumb, but you need to clarify. It's a part of the learning process. You need to get your answers, your questions answered. So being proactive, as Robert said, but in like some other ways that maybe he didn't point out that I think are important too.
And one thing, I know we've all talked about organization, but for me, take really good notes, clean notes, and have good data. Something that's definitely translated from when I was an undergrad to now is the way that my notes shifted, especially for me in a biological setting where I'm looking at organisms that swim away from you. Being able to write down as many details as possible that you can remember in a split second that is going to be useful later is really, really important. And I still use my notebooks from college because A, I was really excited about my classes, but B, they're still relevant to me now. So the transition of my terrible handwriting freshman year to my very neat, very organized, color-coded handwriting senior year has really done me a favor.
So you guys all discussed, helpful skills that, helped you individually, but I wanted to move more into mentorship, especially because Dr. Isaacs and Robert, you're both in a setting where you're teaching, and also Jillian with, running, a sector and always having to talk to other people. I was wondering, what advice do you have in terms of finding a mentor, and also how people can really utilize, mentors and teachers to their advantage in order to learn about research and how to excel in school? Maybe Dr. Isaacs, if you can get us started on that question.
Sure. I mean, there's so many different ways in which one can be mentored. And I think we have to realize that everyone you come in contact with, whether it's a professor or a staff member, all have different roles in your life. And they won't all provide the same type of mentoring, but nonetheless, they will provide important mentoring. So for example, you might have a staff member who can advise you who to seek out for like counseling, for jobs that are available through the, whatever center at your institution. But then you might find a faculty member who can be really instrumental in helping you navigate the discipline in a way that will help you to find your niche within it. But I would say for finding the right advisor for you, especially like a faculty member, you have to find someone who you mesh with. Like, unfortunately, not all faculty members or professors are cut out to be good mentors, right? Some are better than others. And I think it's important to find someone you have a good relationship with, someone you feel comfortable communicating with, who you think is supportive of you. And also, keep the ones you necessarily don't have good relationship with close, because they might also be useful in other ways. They don't have to be ones who are going to guide you to your career, but they might be useful in pushing you, in advising you in other ways as well. So I'll start there.
I guess to build what on Dr. Isaac said, not everybody that you're going to encounter it may be a good mentor for you, but in my experience, I've been able to pick stuff up from other people, right? So through, especially my early career, I had pieces of mentors, I would say. I learned different things from each of them. I really, especially when I first started my career, I really wanted to see like, okay, I want a mentor. I want somebody who I can look to that can give me advice and do all these things. But not everywhere has somebody that you're going to fit with like that. So instead I picked, there was a guy that was a manager who was really like just a bulldog for his people, right? Like the people that worked for him really respected him. He would stand up to anybody for them. They knew that he had their back, right? There was another person who's really good at conflict management. He could calm down anybody, and of course, finding the perfect person that's going to be that great fit for you is the ideal, right? But it's not always going to happen. So I would say pick up what you can from whoever you can. And especially I guess later in your career, now I look more for people that are good at where I'm bad, right? So I want to find people that are good at those things that I know that I struggle with. And some of that comes with knowing yourself and moving through your career and figuring out what you're good at and what you want to do. But finding people that can help you be uncomfortable sometimes to make yourself grow, I think is important too. And the best thing with mentorship, of course, you have to be honest and you have to be open to feedback, and set that trusting relationship. So when you're looking for a mentor, be open to that criticism and be open to that feedback.
Jumping off what Jillian said and finding, your interests, someone asked a really interesting question. How do you recommend people try to discover the area of research or, again, also field that you are in that they could be interested in?
I think you have to explore, right? It's very hard for you. And oftentimes I encounter students who are like, for example, I'm advising incoming freshmen right now for college. And they're like, I want to be a specific cardiovascular. I'm like, oh, how do you know this, right? Sure, it sounds nice. And it's something maybe your parents are doing, or a TV show that you watched and you're interested in this, but without experience, you really can't make these decisions. And so you have to try to gain experience where you can. I'm a chemist, clearly. So one of the things I advise students when they go to graduate school, or even when they're in an undergraduate program, is to jump around, see if you can spend a few hours a day in one lab, learn from them, another few hours here. But experience is very important. Shadow a doctor or multiple doctors if you can, if you're interested in medicine. And that can really change your opinion on a specific field or discipline. So unfortunately, experience and exposure to the different fields is really the only way you're going to find out. But you can also start off by doing some research on your own to get some ideas of what it's like on a day-to-day basis to have these careers.
I agree with that. So you have to have an open mind. The vast majority of my friends in my undergraduate years started out on one track and switched in the middle to do something else. So I think it's kind of funny, actually, the number of students who come in and insist that they're going to be something and do something in particular and then end up doing something else. So you have to keep an open mind. Mentors really can come from anywhere. So you're going to find someone that you mesh with that can be a safe space for you, where you can ask them dumb questions and not feel embarrassed about it. Those people just come up. Me personally, I took a class in it was in planetary science. I didn't realize that I was going to go in that direction, but she was amazing. I loved the class, and she ended up being my thesis advisor, which was great. So these people just come up. You will find them. What I would recommend is keep them in keep in contact with them. You're going to graduate, you're going to go on different parts of the country, different parts of the world maybe, but just keep up those relationships, because you never know when they might come in handy in the future.
The first thing I wanted to say about the initial question for how to find a good mentor is talk to the people that are currently working with them. Talk to the mentees in the programs around you. Get a good idea of what this individual's strengths and weaknesses are, because someone who is currently in their lab is going to be a really good resource for you if you think you might want to work for them. That was something that I did when I was applying to grad schools. I would speak to professors in fields that I wanted to work in, and then I'd ask if I could talk to their students. And I did that with 4 different universities and got a really good insight into, like, how does this person manage their time? Do they want you to be in your office all day, every day? Or is it more of a come to them when something's gone wrong or when something's done? And then for the finding your passions thing, volunteer as much as possible. I just finished like 2 years of AmeriCorps, and we had to get volunteers out for things like service days and like invasive polls. And the one thing that my mentors in these programs said is that if someone has even 4 hours of volunteer experience on their resume, they're going to stand out more and be that much more likely to be hired for a position than somebody who has never done anything in that field in their life. And you don't have to love everything. You should probably try a bunch of different things before you commit to something, because you never know. You might like something this much, or you might like something that much. So just shop around and have some fun.
You guys are all so passionate about your careers. I wanted to move more into what are maybe the best parts of your career or a specific moment. Maybe Jillian, you can start us off.
Sure. So I guess early in my career, it would have been the individual contribution, right? Like when you're working on a problem and you crack the code and you solve it. But as I moved through my career, I found that the most exciting thing to me now is working through others, right? So now I get the opportunity to work with these engineers. A lot of them are early in their career, and it's just so exciting to watch them get it, right? And to see their growth, to be a part of that, to help them find that path and find what they're passionate about. The other unique thing I think about manufacturing is getting to work with people on the floor as well. So you have a lot of different skill sets. So you have engineers, and in my case, you have lab personnel, you have chemical operators or whoever. And one of my favorite moments, so probably from my entire career, came from my last job where I was working with a training program for operators. And we found a lot of gaps basically that we needed to get people up to speed faster. We were having some trouble getting people qualified to operate. And watching people, get it after you put this work into make this training program and working with people and trying to figure out the best way to let people learn and the best way to train them. I actually got to watch somebody do something that they couldn't do before. And I was like creeping behind an electrical cabinet with one of my peers, and we're like watching do the task. And it was like one of the most exciting things. It's like, this is awesome. It's like be able to see them get it. And whether it's an operator or an engineer, whoever it is, absolutely my favorite part of my career to help them develop and grow.
So for me, the best thing in my job is witnessing a student achieve their goals, whether it be on a standardized test or in an academic class. I do tutor a lot of students to prepare for standardized tests like the SAT, ACT, GRE, MCAT. And every time that they reach and exceed their goals, they are very excited. They text me and, just with all this excitement, enthusiasm, and it really kind of melts my heart because it's, all the work that they put in, all the assignments that I've given them, it all pays off in the end, and they're all just so happy. So it's very rewarding for me, not just because they've achieved their goals on a certain test score, but also in the process of preparing for any given test, they are learning. It's one of the reasons why I don't think that standardized testing is all that bad. I know it's kind of a cliche in education circles, you should teach tests. For one, and of the opinion that test prep can be useful in its own right, but just the rewarding response to a student achieving their goals is really what does it for me.
Well, I think we're all on the same page here. But yeah, I mean, as a professor, my students are, I think, central to what I do and to like the satisfaction I get from my job, which is to see them grow and become like really independent scientists. They can think for themselves. They can go on to graduate schools or even medical school, taking like the skills they've learned and like transferring them into their own work. But one other thing that really gives me joy is not just seeing every student succeed and do well, but particularly students from underrepresented groups. So a lot of students who are either Black and brown students, queer students who oftentimes feel as if they don't belong in STEM, and often are ostracized from the community, either by professors who treat them poorly or just expect them to fail. Being that professor who can, help them grow in confidence and lend them support and watch them overcome their own fears is probably the greatest thing I've ever, I would say, of my career. And I just love every day. Like yesterday, I got an email from a student who is now in vet school, a queer student who almost failed their first chemistry class, was told to withdraw by a professor, retook it with me, and is now in vet school. And, they emailed me. I was like, I just want to thank you again. I'm like, you can stop sending me thank you emails. You're in vet school. It's been over a year. They're like, you don't understand. Every time I pass an exam, I'm like, I wouldn't be here without you. And for me, reaching students like that is the most important part of my career.
I completely agree. And I think this is a great segue into our discussion about LGBTQ and STEM and diversity. But I wanted to also bring into this conversation aspects of burnout and how, that affect and mental health. So I wanted to just start off with, how do you deal with burnout? What helps you stay motivated? Maybe Alex, if you can start us off with that question.
So I'm annoyingly curious to a fault. I really am. When I say I'm an ecologist, it's me. I want to know how everything interacts with everything. And the way that I deal with burnout is I try to have my hand in as many different projects as possible, maybe in a leadership role, maybe in a support role, but I want to be able to schedule my week where I'm doing a little bit of different stuff every day. And then to Jillian's point about having a good priority list of what you need to work on, being aware of what your deadlines are, that motivates me to get specific things done and also allows me to switch focus. And then I don't get bored of things. If I'm doing the same thing every day, then I'm not going to be happy come Saturday. But if I'm doing a spawner survey Monday, Tuesday, if I'm checking the smolt trap Wednesday, Thursday, and if I'm doing a frog survey on Friday, or doing some kind of data collection, and then the next week I'm writing reports, that for me keeps me going, because it's like, okay, this task is done, let's get on to the next thing. And it's always this fun, like, I just get so excited. I love this so much.
So I would have to say that, taking a little bit of time to reset your mind and relax is definitely useful. I like getting out into nature, getting away from the city, getting away from people, breathing fresh air, feeling the sunshine on my skin, even for just brief periods of time, can be very rejuvenating. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, I think especially someone who's working in the lab, right? And you're oftentimes, if you're in a situation where tomorrow's work is dependent on today's results, then you really can't necessarily focus on something else. And if you're in a situation like that, I think you have to accept that, okay, I'm not going to be productive over the next few days. This chemistry or whatever it is you're working on isn't, panning out the way I would like. Just take a step back, right? And my advisor always said, a day in the library is better than 30 days in a lab. And sometimes you might just need to take a library day, take a day off from doing whatever it is work you're doing, take a step back from the project, and start rethinking, or thinking about what are the obstacles where you're not making progress. And also just to clear your head. Sometimes it's good. Leave at 1, 2 p.m. if you can from work, and sometimes you need some, you need a personal day, right? A mental, to get your mental health in order. So sometimes it's just good to take a little bit of a break.
I'm writing that down. Personal day, Jackie, do that. I was wondering if we can move more into, how do you achieve leadership roles as part of the LGBTQ community, or maybe that doesn't affect it. If maybe Jillian, you can start us off going more into depth to that.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really seen much of an effect. I would say in working in industry, that's probably company dependent too. Maybe in some other companies that I've worked with, it would have been a little harder based on culture. I have had some issues. I haven't always been out at work. And unfortunately, sometimes when you're not out, you hear what people say about people that are out. So I would have anticipated that I may have had problems if I would have tried to get into leadership there. But I think later in my career, as I've wanted to advance, I've looked for places that, it wouldn't be a problem for me. And I'm super lucky in that my job now is extremely supportive. And, I don't really see any effect, a negative effect, I would say, for being in the LGBTQ community.
So I also agree with that. I think it is a function of, the world is changing and we are making progress, but I think that certain geographical areas of the country are obviously not obviously, but are a little bit more accepting, and therefore it's not as much of an issue. And where I work in Northern New Jersey and Manhattan, it's really not an issue at all. It's never prevented me from pursuing a leadership role. So yeah, it's never really been an issue for me.
Maybe Robert, you could go more into how it's changed from your undergrad into teaching and now also in tutoring?
Yeah, of course. So I graduated in 2002, which, was a decent amount of time ago. Gay marriage was only instituted across the country, 5 or 6 years ago. So I actually didn't come out until I was 30. So it was rough in the beginning. And I think back now, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but some of the things that I would do differently, I think I would have, known a little bit more about myself, but also understood that there were resources available to me that could have helped me through the process. But it has changed since then, which is great. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to happen everywhere and not just in the Northeast. So, yeah.
Maybe Dr. Isaacs, you can mirror off of Robert in terms of how you've seen the career shift through undergrad into not only teaching, but also doing research.
I think a lot of, I would say queer people in STEM are a lot more visible now than I would say we were 10, 20 years ago. That's definitely the case. I remember when I came out in graduate school, I was like one of two people who are out. And now I know of like graduate students at different institutions that have a whole organization to support queer students in STEM within their institutions with faculty support, which is something that wasn't around, I would say 10, 20 years ago. So I would say the landscape in STEM is actually quite positive and trending in the right direction for people who are queer would be my, it is my observation. In terms of leadership roles, I would say if there are none, you create them. If queer representation is important to you in your company or in your job or your institution, wherever you are, then create positions to make yourself more visible. One thing we did at my institution is that there was no queer representation, no queer leadership when we started, and there was a cohort of us who started at our institution as faculty members, and we decided to start an organization at our institution called Outfront, which is a faculty and staff queer alliance. So this is a faculty and staff organization, and we kind of like met with the administration and the deans and the president are like, we want you to do this, right? We want you to fix this. We want you to change things from maternity leave to parental leave. We want you to like allow students to have a drag show on campus or whatever it is. So I think sometimes if there's no leadership positions, you might have to create positions or step into roles so you can advocate for yourselves and for others around you who might not necessarily be in a position to do so.
That makes me so happy to hear. I feel like I'm still pretty green in my career. I've only been out of school for 3-4 years now. And I actually wrote my admissions essays on being a queer person in the field of fisheries. In the 4 years I've been working, I've met hundreds, thousands of people. I've met 2 other queer people because this field is very straight white male, which is, it's a thing. We deal with it. But I was just so tired of worrying that my orientation was going to be an issue for people at work, that I wanted to be judged solely on my work and not anything else, that I wasn't out until this year. And I'm out to my friends. I've been out since I was 15. But professionally, I was like, I don't want this to be an issue. And I'd rather get to a place where I can be in a more leadership position so it won't affect me getting there. But when I was applying to grad school, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm ready. And I'm really excited for being a TA and for being a student researcher, because I really want people to see, especially in the field of fisheries, that's not a very diverse field because there's not a lot of jobs, that like you can do it too. And it shouldn't matter if you're X, Y, or Z, as long as you're good at your job. That's the only thing. And I'm just really, really excited to be able to take that next step to finally be in a leadership position, because for the last 3 years, the organizations I was working in, I was the mentee, junior by like 30 years to my mentors. So I haven't really done much yet, but I am ready to hit the ground running, and I'm so excited for the opportunity to do that.
I was wondering if you can expand more about that, about how you navigate your personal life and your work life, and knowing when to come out, or speaking more just about being comfortable with LGBTQ in your given field? And I want to open it up to everyone. Maybe Alex, you can start us off.
So I want to make one thing like abundantly clear to anybody who's here. I'm very out in any like public situation. I do not try and hide my sexuality. I'm the kind of person who's like, you either like me for me or you don't. And that doesn't, like, that's on you, bud. Like, you're missing out. And when that translates to professional relationships, I tend to wait and see if I can create a connection with my coworkers or my bosses, my supervisors, before I give them that information. Primarily because the whole thing for me is, I need you to know that I can do my job before I trust you with anything else, or before I give you any piece of me that's not purely work related. Because at the end of the day, this is a job, and you can have great, phenomenal friends from your jobs. I'm actually moving in with my site partner from last year. I'm so excited. We built a really great relationship and we've become really great friends. But like every time I start a new job, it's like, all right, back in the closet for now. If I feel like I can trust you with information and you're not going to use it against me, then great. If you want to hang out on a Saturday, you're going to get a very different me. You're going to get a more authentic me. And I kind of have a lot of privilege because I'm a very tall white male. So like I'm big and I take up a lot of space. And I kind of have the audacity to be like, yeah, you either like it or you don't. And I don't think that works for everybody, but you'll find people, especially as the time goes on, as our generations get older and older, that it's less of an issue, I think, now, because I've never experienced any problem with it. Primarily because they're so frustrated with me being too excited to be at work, too ready to be on the job. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's just how I've been dealing with it for the last couple of years.
So for me, it rarely comes up. When I start tutoring a student, it's not as if, we start talking about our personal lives. We might, say a little bit about our backgrounds, but we really kind of dive into the content and the task at hand. And as the relationship develops, I'll start to, drop little hints or something. It's not even a hint. It's not even like I'm purposely doing it, but I'll talk about my husband or, yeah, generally that's it. Or, what's going on in my life, just a little chit chat to kind of build the rapport with the student. And it's like Alex said, it's never been a problem. It's not something that really comes up. And as time moves on, I foresee it being less and less of a problem, which it really isn't in the first place. So yeah.
I would say, I feel like I've been in kind of the unique position of being in a male-dominated industry generally, and also being gay. And so in some ways, it's almost worked out better for me coming out. The first management role I really had, or the first big management role, I had a department of about 150, and I was the only woman in it. I was the only woman to ever lead it. I think I was like the second to ever work in it. So, it was, at times I thought, how different do I really want to be here? Like I'm already a woman, and that was already challenging, people fighting to like open the door for me and like stopping what they're talking about when I walk in the room because they don't want to be offensive or swear or whatever, right? But honestly, being a lesbian has helped in some ways because it's helped me be less threatening. So I know that doesn't really work for everybody, but I don't know, it's allowed me to relate to the guys in a different way. In my role now, it's not so, that is not the case. I work with a lot of women, and that's really exciting. And through my experience at my old job, I kind of just decided, you know what, like I'm putting a picture of my wife on my desk, and that's just what it is. And so like at some point, I think you get tired of coming out, especially when you change jobs and you meet a lot of people and you're telling your story and whatever, and you're trying to get to know people. And like the hundreds of times I've come out in my life, I was like, I'm just going to put a picture, and then people can see, I'm gay. That's what it is. We can talk about it or we can not, but it's there. And I'm lucky to be in a company that's gone well for me so far.
Yeah, I think everybody's saying all the right things, and I agree. I would just like to say, come out when you feel safe to come out. Come out when you feel most comfortable to come out. For some of us, it'll be on day one. It'll be in the interview process. For some of us, it'll be later. I mean, the statistics show that about 60% of like at least people in STEM, as faculty, do not come out to their colleagues until much later after they've worked at an institution. And it's unfortunate, right? But we all have our own own ways of dealing with being queer, our own fears, our own experiences, and there's no right or wrong way. You just have to do what's right for you. If you want to work on, for example, say job security, and then you come out, then do that. If it's important to you that you're in a space where you know immediately that you're going to be supported by these people and by your colleagues, then you want to make that known in the interview, right? And you want to be like, listen, this is important to me. Am I going to get supported in this space? If not, I'm going to just apply somewhere else, right? So I think you have to think about how it's going to affect you. Are you the kind of person who's able being, keeping your personal life private for a number of years, or you're the kind of person who that will drive crazy if you have to like tiptoe around your colleagues. So there's no right or wrong answer. Do what works for you, and whatever is good for your mental health.
Mental health's a big one. Being aware of the time, I wanted to move into our final question, which I want every panelist to answer. So if you could go back in time and do it again, would you do anything differently? Maybe Robert, you can start us off with that one.
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't come out till I was 30. So what I would do differently is be more comfortable with myself and to come out earlier. There were, like I also mentioned earlier, there were some resources in college available to LGBTQ plus people that I'd never even considered taking advantage of because I was hiding from the world, and really I was hiding from myself. So, Dr. Isaacs just said, come out when you're ready, and that's a good piece of advice. But for me, I would have done it earlier. And I think that I would have been happier in my 20s. And I don't know if I would necessarily have ended up in a different place than where I am now, but I think that, things could have been a little bit different, and I definitely would have been happier. So that's what I would have done.
Maybe Alex, if you want to go next.
Two separate thoughts on this. The biggest mistake I made in undergrad professionally was not working in a lab or doing extracurricular research. Unfortunately, a lot of the programs at the University of Washington require you to be an in-state student. And I was an out-of-state student from California, so I couldn't do the work study, and I had to get a job to help pay for schooling. So I missed out on a bunch of really cool experiences, especially when it comes to like writing papers and doing research. If you can get work in a lab doing the stuff in your field, that's going to be what you think you want to do later. That is one thing that I would change, because I got dinged on my graduate research fellowship program grant this year because I didn't have enough publications and I didn't have enough research experience. And that was the pretty much deciding factor for me, was that my portfolio, while field-based, was great, I didn't have those finished pieces that they really wanted to see. And the other thing is, I didn't really make a lot of queer friends in college because, like Robert was saying, I kind of just did my own thing and let people know that about me when I wanted them to, when I felt like it. And that's a big regret of mine, because I am trying to get to that point in my life where I'm not the token gay guy in the room. And I don't always feel like that, because I have really great straight friends, but I would love any type of queer person to be my friend right now. That's like what I'm hoping for my late 20s, early 30s, is to be in a room with people that also get it, And so much of that is just being comfortable with who you are and being safe and being smart. But like, again, I have the audacity to want that now, and I'm ready for it. So like, I'm actively searching out people who are at least going to get it a little bit more. So take the time to make friends with people who you might not necessarily click with right away, but who have shared experiences, because in the long run, I think that is going to be really great for keeping your morale up when you're potentially burning out, because having different friends who provide different levels of support is great and necessary. And I just want more friends, really.
Maybe Jillian.
Well, Alex, you seem wonderful, so I'm sure that you have many people here who'd want to be your friend. I guess for me, what I would say is, it's kind of echoing what Alex said earlier. I wasn't necessarily the best student. I really excelled in high school. It was very easy to me. I took the AP classes. I was good at them. I took physics. I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is going to be no problem. I chose not to carry over any credits or take the AP test because I don't know why. I was 18. So I get to college and get completely smacked in the face because everybody's smarter than me. I had a good GPA and I played on 3 different sports teams and was the captain too. And everybody else played 4 sports and they had a better GPA than me and they were the valedictorian. And I got kind of lost in that for my first year. It was such a rigorous schedule and environment, and going to a school like Georgia Tech, it's very much like, if you can't make it, then you don't deserve to be here. And there were probably a lot of resources that I didn't capitalize on. I ended up, I'm clearly very passionate about manufacturing. We had this great manufacturing lab that I did not know about until my final year, when I walked through it to get to my professor's office. And I was like, oh my God, and by then, of course, I'm graduating in a few months. I can't really get into a research lab. So if I could do it over, I would pay more attention. I spent a lot of time on extracurriculars. I was, coming into myself more. I was in a different place. I knew I was gay, but I was really kind of dating a lot for the first time. So it was just all over. And I wish that I had a better foundation in some of the classes that, I took. I think in general, for every negative, I don't know if this is for everybody, but it's also kind of shaped me into who I am. I think, I've had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I feel like maybe I'm not, that I didn't have the best GPA when I graduated. I had to work a little bit harder than some of my, my friends who graduated, who got these awesome jobs right out of school, and I don't even qualify because my GPA sucks. So I think everything has worked out for me as it's supposed to. And when I look back, there are little things that maybe I wish I would have paid more attention in thermo, but the path that I took led me to my wife. It led me to the job that I have now. It led me to this perspective. So, I'm grateful for even the mistakes, I guess, at the end of it.
Yeah, I would say one thing I wish I did more of during my high school, college, grad school years is just ask for help more. There are lots of periods in my life where all it would have taken, just been to reach out to someone and just be like, what do I do here? Provide some advice or ask for help. And even see a therapist in graduate school when I was dealing with coming out. I really fumbled that one, and waited until I had literally an almost mid-20s crisis before I started addressing that. But just asking for help and recognizing when you don't have the solutions on your own, and it's fine to just talk to someone. That's something I wish I did more of, and I think I would have been able to change a lot of negative outcomes at different points in my life.
I have my checklist right here. Ask for help, be honest with yourself, and make sure to have a personal day. I just wanted to say thank you all, Dr. Isaacs, Alex, Jillian, and Robert, for sharing your journeys both professionally and personally. Your presence here will help guide many STEM students to be successful. And I know I have learned so much from the discussion today, and I hope you all have enjoyed the opportunity as well listening. Please note that a recording of this webinar will be available on the Discord soon and also on YouTube. I look forward to interacting with all of you on STEM Potential and setting up additional events for our community. We will now take a 15-minute break before we start the physicians panel. I just want to say thank you again to Dr. Isaacs, Robert, Jillian, and Alex for being here for an hour and helping us all in all parts of STEM. So thank you, and see you in 15 minutes.